It is impossible to build your own happiness on the misfortune of others. Daisaku Ikeda. My name is Tyler Clinton, and I'm going to tell you my story. Before I begin, let me say that I am not even a distant relative of the former president, though the irony of his behavior during his administration never leaves me. Speculating on why your spouse refused to be faithful to her vows while claiming to want to stay married is a question I never dreamed of asking. So here I am, sitting on my back porch on a cool May evening, waiting for my soon-to-be ex-wife, who has just been served divorce papers by her place of employment, to burst through the door. I'm guessing how she'll react, but I'm not completely sure because I think she's lost her mind. The discovery of her cheating happened 3 weeks ago on the 28th of April. I'll come back to it in a little while. We chose the back porch because it is secluded. We live on a 2-acre lot, so even if there were screaming going on out there, the neighbors are unlikely to hear. Also, there is a private detective parked around the corner watching. He's there for our protection in case one of us gets so worked up that we snap. Lindsay Lynn to me is a smart and beautiful woman. We met in graduate school in Chicago. I was getting my MBA in medicine and public health. She was getting her CRNA degree, which for readers outside the medical world means she was studying to be a nurse anesthetist. She worked in the neonatal unit for 2 years. Long hours, a lot of emotional strain. Nurse anesthetists work relatively normal hours, usually 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. 4 days a week, for much higher pay and less trauma. Lynn's only potentially significant disadvantage was that she gets bored easily and is always looking for something new. We were enjoying the concert and she was making plans for the next weekend. Anything new was also a temptation. Whether it was a new app, a new friend, or a new restaurant, her interest was always piqued. We discussed this during our courtship, and I made it clear that anything new was fine with me. But when it came to marriage, I was a traditionalist. I believe that you could find new every day in a relationship with the same person for years if you put your whole heart into it. She never gave me any reason to suspect that she disagreed with this. Since her somewhat fickle nature was prone to wandering from the familiar to the new, I insisted that we sign a prenuptial agreement. She was not thrilled with the idea and felt it was an insult to her character. I explained that it was a bilateral agreement that protected her as much as it protected me. She gave in and signed the agreement. It was simple. 50/50ths on the wealth accumulated during the marriage, with everyone keeping 100% of what they brought in. 80/20ths if the cause of the breakup was adultery. Honestly, after we signed it, I don't think either of us gave it much thought, until recently. After we got married, we moved from Chicago to Des Moines, Iowa. Low cost of living, strong economy, vibrant and growing downtown, and great career opportunities in the healthcare field. Cold winters, mostly mild spring and fall. Summers that can range from very pleasant to almost, but not quite, unbearably hot. Unlike our neighbors to the south, St. Louis, Des Moines does not have high humidity. Even on hot summer days, there is always a pleasant coolness in the evenings. And the sweet corn in July and August is delicious. It's also the birthplace of Ben Silbermann, the creator of Pinterest. What more do you need? In 8 years, we've both had jobs we love, a beautiful home, neighbors and friends we genuinely enjoyed, and what I thought until 3 weeks ago was a solid marriage. I say solid, not perfect. No one has a perfect marriage because there are no perfect people on the planet. From time to time, we fought. I am a convinced squeezer of toothpaste from the bottom, and she is haphazard. She wants the dishes washed and the kitchen cleaned every night, while I'm content to load the dishwasher for 3 or 4 days before running it. Yes, like every other couple in America, we could fight about all sorts of nonsense. But much more often, we took long walks in the evenings and had long conversations on the porch. Quick weekend trips to the cabin or to a favorite concert in Chicago, Minneapolis, or Dallas were not uncommon. We enjoyed each other in and talked openly and honestly about what we liked or disliked. At least that was the impression I got. Both of us were 34. We knew that kids were just around the corner, and we were looking forward to being mom and dad when the kids came along. By now, you may be wondering, am I really a failure in bed and just don't want to admit it? Is Lynn completely stunning and being courted by every man I meet? Maybe we've already considered an open marriage? Did I miss the warning signs at the beginning of our relationship that Lynn would turn into a slut? Maybe I cheated on her and she's just getting revenge? Is her lover hanging on to her like a horse, like a Greek Adonis she can't escape? Is she changing her financial situation? Let me tell you all in order. First, Lynn seems genuinely pleased with our life together. I've never been called the best, but I've worked hard to give as much as I've gotten, and I've never heard any complaints. Second, she is a very pretty woman with a quick wit and a strong mind. She is Irish Italian, a blonde brunette who is 5 feet 8 inches tall. Third, I can't recall any warning signals, but if I'm that stupid, I guess I got what I deserved for falling asleep at the time of the switch. Perhaps I should have been more attentive to her fascination with the new. Fourth, since we've been a couple, I've never touched another woman except for a friendly hello or a goodbye hug. Fifth, I think the honest answer is that he is handsome, but I wouldn't say handsome to death. He's about my height, 6'1", same build, about 180 pounds. Trim and strong, but not ripped. Blonde hair and blue eyes. Sixth, he's only 28, a medical student who's been working in the operating room for the past 2 months. Seventh, he'll have money someday, but since she makes 100 grand and I make twice that, I don't see the temptation of cash, fancy cars, or a luxury home. He won't start making serious money for at least another 10 years. So, as you can imagine, I have no idea how we got here, but perhaps I should share what happened over the last 3 weeks. It was the last week of April, and I was out of town for 3 days for a conference of medical administrators in Kansas City. I was supposed to be there for 4, but when I looked through the workshop offerings on the last day, I didn't find anything that caught my eye. It had already been a good week. On the first day, I met 3 other people from my region who were in similar positions. We eventually formed a small team and got together every night to compare notes. Enjoyed the good camaraderie, networked, exchanged contact information, and laughed over a few beers. Later on the 3rd day, I informed them that I was hitting the road first thing in the morning. Since the trip takes less than 3 hours, I didn't bother with air travel and drove myself. Interstate 35 is a relatively quiet highway with less traffic than most highways. On the way, I listened to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast about World War I. KC has a wonderful World War I museum courtesy of Missouri's only president. Carlin gave me some information before I took a tour before the first session of the seminar. President Harry Truman, by the way, for those of you who aren't aware of what this country is all about. Since I was driving, I was able to hit the road at my leisure. Since I thought I was on my way home to my loving wife, who would be having her first day of a 3-day break, I got up early and was on the road by 5 in the morning. I intended to wake her up pleasantly around 8 in the morning. When I arrived home, Lynn's car was not in the driveway. She drives a 2018 Honda Accord with crystal black pearlescent paint and never pulls into the garage unless it's raining. It hasn't rained in a week. If the car isn't in the driveway, then it's not home. I was a little puzzled. We work out at the same gym, Lifetime Fitness, so she couldn't go out for a run. She always sleeps off on her first day off, but upon entering the house, I didn't see that she was home last night. The bed was made, which never happens unless it's Saturday, laundry day. There was no sign of leftovers from the previous night's dinner in the refrigerator. It was suggestive. I called Lynn, but the call went straight to voicemail. Luckily, we both have Glimpse on our phones, a navigation tracking system that works on any iPhone. I opened the app and saw that her phone was somewhere near the airport. What? We live in northeast Des Moines, near a private golf course called The Harvester. We both love golf and chose our home based in part on joining this club. The airport was on the southwest side of town. I was starting to get a little nervous and decided that if she answered, I would play dumb. I'd just ask how she was doing. I figured it wouldn't occur to her this early in the day to look at the Glimpse to confirm my location. I waited 15 minutes, then called her a second time. She answered, and that's when my world started to fall apart. Hey, babe, she said in a sleepy voice. Why are you calling me so early on my day off? I'm sorry, Lynn, I apologized, somehow keeping my composure. I miss you, and I had some time before my morning seminar. Just wanted to hear your voice. I realized from the background noise that she was sitting up in bed. Not in our bed. It's okay, Ty. I'm always happy to talk to my favorite husband. Looks like you're still in bed, so I won't keep you up. Just wanted to tell you that I love you and I'll be home no later than dinner tomorrow night, unless you want me to miss my last day and rush home. That would be wonderful, but as soon as I get up, I'm going to run errands right away and then have dinner with Kim and Sally tonight. We planned it 2 weeks in advance, so I can't interfere with them. The girls were 2 of her co-workers. She didn't say anything to hint that she wasn't at home in our bed, so I had to think fast. Okay, babe, I'm letting you go. Hey, before you hang up, could you check the top drawer of my nightstand and tell me if I left the pen you gave me for my birthday in there? I don't have it, and I'm afraid I might have lost it. It was in my shirt pocket. Ty, honey, I really want to roll over and go back to sleep. Can I check it and call you back before I head to lunch? Wrong answer. I knew I usually got something like, I'll check, but I won't be happy if it's not there and you lose my gift. My heart was pounding hard in my chest, but somehow I kept my composure. Sure, Lynn, just don't forget to check. I'll let you go back to sleep. Sorry again for waking you up. Thanks, babe. I'll call you in a little while. Love you. At this point, I was at a loss for words, unable to utter, I love you too. I hung up the phone and headed to my car, hoping for a miracle but expecting the worst. It was a 40-minute drive from our house to the airport. I made it in 30, and I was lucky I didn't get pulled over for speeding. Every time I checked the app, her phone didn't move. If she bothered to check hers and found out I was getting close, we'd have a hell of a fight. However, I was sure she was so engrossed in what or whoever gave her new experience that she would just assume I was telling her the truth and never bother to check the location of my phone. The GPS led me to the Hampton Inn, located down the street from the DSM. I parked at the far end of the parking lot, away from the few remaining cars in front of the hotel. After a few minutes, I realized that Lynn would recognize my car if he saw it, so I moved to the adjacent parking lot of the Quality Inn. I chose a spot where I could watch the comings and goings from the front door of the Hamptons, but not one where she might spot my dark blue Genesis G70. I had no plan. I fought back the tears that came to my eyes time and time again. Was she really cheating on me? With whom and why? Had she really thrown away 8 years of what I thought was a strong and committed relationship? Had she been seduced, and would she be ashamed if it was found out? Could there be an innocent explanation for her lies and deceit? If it was just an evening to pamper herself until I got home, she'd go to the Marriott downtown or the Deluxe. But why pamper herself there when there's a hot tub and pool at home? Besides, her masseuse was only 10 minutes from home and she adored her. None of this added up to innocence. I agonized over all of this for about an hour when she finally showed up with Justin Banks. They held hands and exchanged loving kisses as they headed for the exit. Damn, that young medical student was entertaining my wife. I snapped a couple quick shots on my phone as they broke off for a more passionate kiss before jumping into his car. I met him about 2 months ago when we were at a hospital appointment. I like most people and find common ground easily with just about everyone, but Justin seemed a bit of a jerk to me. When Lynn introduced us to each other, he squeezed his hand even more in a handshake, as if trying to prove he was the alpha male. My dad had always taught me to look my conversation partner in the eye and offer a firm hand, so I wasn't impressed. Our small talk was contrived, and it seemed like he was constantly smirking. I mentioned this to Lynn on the way home, and her response was dismissive. You hang out with doctors a lot, Ty, and you know they can be narcissistic assholes. Justin's not like that. Now in the parking lot, watching my marriage heat up, I struggled to control my emotions. What should I do? Go to court? Hire a private investigator? I had to think about it. Most of my job is problem solving, so I forced myself to calm down and think. After a few minutes, I had something of a plan formed and decided to take a chance. When they left the Hamptons, they didn't have overnight bags. It didn't look like they were going to check out. Maybe they were going to grab a bite to eat and then come back for an afternoon treat. I followed the Glimpse app and verified that they had stopped about 2 miles away at a local diner. I had at least a few minutes to act. I walked back to the Hamptons and entered the lobby. Thankfully, it was empty except for a middle-aged woman working the front desk. She looked up and smiled as I approached. Good morning, what can I do for you? I quickly glanced at her name tag and noticed she was wearing a wedding ring. Hi, Beth, my name is Tyler. I'm having a problem and I'm hoping you can help me. Happy to meet you, Tyler, and I'll be sure to help if I can. Do you have a reservation and would you like to stop by early? No, Beth, I replied quietly and seriously. The couple that left about 15 minutes ago, a brunette woman and a younger blonde-haired man, did you notice them? Her happy expression turned more serious. Yes, I noticed them. What's the problem? I'm afraid I have, Beth. The woman is my wife and the young man works with her. Unfortunately, I believe they are cheating on me behind my back. Oh, sir, I don't know how I can help you, she said with a look of confusion on her face. Most Iowans are good-natured and neighborly people. They also tend to mind their own business. Beth, I'd like to look in the room they're occupying. I'm not going to cause trouble or make a scene at your hotel. I just need to check my suspicions. I'm not asking for a room key. I'm perfectly fine with someone from housekeeping letting me into the room and making sure I don't stay there for more than 2 minutes. I just need to check. I'm sorry to ask you to do this, but I see your ring, and I know you understand how a spouse might feel in a situation like this. Beth thought for a moment. You seem like an honest man. The couple did strike me as odd, but what people do is none of my business. I appreciate your concerns, however. Could you please give me the woman's name? She registered them on her credit card. Of course, her name is Lindsay Clinton, and she most likely used an American Express Gold card. I can even give you the number if you'd like. I appreciate your attention and discretion. That seemed to do the trick, and a minute later the Amex number was confirmed. Can you call the housekeeping department? I asked. No need, she replied. Thomas, she said in a loud voice. Thomas, also a porter, appeared from around the corner. Yes, Beth? Thomas, I'm going to step away from the counter for about 5 minutes. I'll be on the 3rd floor. You're in charge until I get back. Thomas looked like he'd just been put in command of the White House. Yes, Mom. Beth winked at me and ordered me to follow her. We rode the elevator to the 3rd floor in silence. Neither of us knew how to make small talk when one person had just learned potentially devastating news. We walked down the hallway and stopped in front of room 319. Beth held the key card up to the reader. I hoped she'd hit red and not let me in. Green, no such luck. I walked in and Beth was standing in the doorway holding the door open. Iowa people are also practical. If I turned out to be a psycho, it would be easy to get Beth to leave. Looking around the room, I saw clothes scattered here and there. A man's casual button-down shirt and khakis, as well as loafers and a belt, tossed on this side of the bed. Moving to the far side, I saw what I expected, though I prayed it wouldn't be. The light beige blouse I'd bought for Lynn for her last birthday, and a short dark blue skirt. Trying to think straight, I decided that pictures and videos of the room might be helpful. I'm not a lawyer, or I would have known that a 2-foot ambulance chaser could throw the whole thing out on the assumption that it was all set up by me. Unaware of this legal nuance, I scanned the room for about 60 seconds of videotape, narrating as I went along. I am in room 319 of the Des Moines Airport Marriott Hotel. It is 5 to 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 28th of April, 2022. I am in a hotel room that was booked and paid for by my wife, Lindsay Clinton, using her American Express Gold card, number 555173391845520. Don't ask me why I memorize card numbers, I just do. Last night, she checked into a room with a medical school student from her hospital named Justin Banks. Judging by the ambience and the odor in the room, my wife and Justin cheated on me from last night until this morning. I saw them leave the Hamptons about 15 minutes ago. They were kissing and holding hands. I have 2 pictures to prove it. I quickly looked into the bathroom, but there wasn't much to see. Before heading out the door, I decided to grab a couple things to take with me. Otherwise, I could take them in for DNA testing. Not that I'd be surprised by what I'd find out. Plus, it might put Lynn on edge if he couldn't find them. As Beth and I entered the elevator, I started to lose control of myself. Tears were rolling down my face. Beth, a well-meaning woman from Iowa, put her hand on my shoulder and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Clinton. We stepped off the elevator into the lobby, and I started reaching for my wallet. Don't even think about it, son, she said, in a tone that left no room for argument. I smiled, thanked her, and said, I know I shouldn't say this, but if you interact with them, please don't give them the slightest hint that I was here. The corners of her mouth lifted in the semblance of a smirk. She winked and said, I've never seen you or heard of you in my entire life, and I'm insulted that you would suggest otherwise. Well, as you can see, my plan has come to an end. What to do next? I've already admitted that I have no legal knowledge. However, even my limited understanding of divorce in the U.S. told me that I could be in deep shit if I filed for divorce too quickly, despite the prenup. That was the bad news. The good news was that I wasn't expected home until late Friday night. I had time to think and make a plan. Since I was on the south side of town, I drove another 30 or so miles southeast to the small town of Winterset, and 40 minutes later found myself at Rudy's restaurant on John Wayne Drive. Winterset is the Duke's hometown, and there's even a small museum there in his honor. I know this because my father, who could recite every John Wayne movie by heart, used to bring my brother and me here when we were kids. Sitting in a booth in the back row, I noticed a quote from his latest movie on the wall. In the movie The Rifleman, Wayne played an aging gunfighter dying of cancer who was determined to go out with a gun in his hands, keeping his boots on, rather than let a terrible disease eat away at him until he died. I won't be hurt. I won't be insulted. I won't have my hand raised on me. I don't do that to other people and demand the same from them. I'm not as much of a Duke fan as my dad was. I'm more like Clint Eastwood from Josie Wales's Outlaw, but I found myself chuckling. Damn right, Pilgrim. I said it out loud, not addressing anyone in particular, but the waitress who approached my table heard my best Wayne impersonation. She just rolled her eyes and replied in her best Duke language, "So, young man, would you like a snack?" I ordered coffee and a big breakfast. Such a simple thing as enjoying food made me feel better. While I sat and ate, I looked up and read several articles about spouses who cheat. According to the experts, this is probably not an isolated case. There is no way they would be so amiable if it was a drunken one-night stand lust. Statistically, in the US, women who cheat on their husbands are rarely a one-time experience. It had probably been going on for a long time, but I had no proof. That was about to change, so I started making a list. There was no way I would stay married to a cheating husband. Even if it was relatively recent, I could forgive and maybe even keep some love in my heart. But all trust was lost forever. I would hire someone to help me get proof. Even with a prenup in place, I needed to get solid legal advice from someone who understood the financial side of the equation. I needed to get tested for STDs. Justin Banks was bound to get infected, one way or another. I had about 36 hours to get into action. I finished my breakfast and left the server a $50 tip for a $16 breakfast. At least one person in the Des Moines area would have a good day. Before leaving the diner, I texted Lynn. "Sorry, found my pen at the bottom of my satchel." A moment later, she replied, "Lucky for you." In response, I typed 6 words, "Screw you, bitch, cheating whore." I didn't actually do that, but it was awfully tempting. I simply replied, "Uh-huh." 2 hours later, I found myself in the office of Templeton, Sharp, and Schaefer. I had met Templeton before at a charity event and knew he practiced family law. He returned my call and calmly listened to my story. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Clinton." "I appreciate that, Mr. Templeton. Please call me Tyler." "Fine, Tyler, I'm Edward, Ed to my friends and clients, so call me Ed." "Thank you, sir." "Tyler, I'm not nitpicking you. Legally, your situation is not very favorable. The lack of children helps, but the lack of fault means you may have to go to counseling or talk to your spouse for the court to determine if the marriage is truly broken. If the prenup was drafted properly, you may be able to avoid financial loss, but that remains to be seen. I want to refer you to my partner, Eli Sharp. He is a professional in our business when it comes to divorce and will do the best job for you. Let me put you in touch with his assistant, Diane, and she will set everything up." An hour later, I was already sitting in his office. I learned that Eli Sharp lived up to his name. A short guy, only 5'10", and probably weighed 130 pounds. From what I understand, he was an avid swimmer and had been since he was a kid. He had several school records in his home state of Indiana. He still swam for an hour 6 times a week. After spending 10 minutes with him, anyone could tell that he had spent his life proving that being small doesn't mean you can win a battle. He brought the same attitude to his law practice. He listened carefully to everything I knew so far, asked a few clarifying questions, and then suggested some initial strategies. "Are they staying at the Hamptons today?" "I don't know." "Don't worry, I can find out, sorry." He picked up the phone and said, "Diane, put me through to Molly and tell her I need to know if Lindsay Clinton has booked room 319 at the Hampton Hotel in DCM by tomorrow morning. If so, tell Moll I need a full report by noon tomorrow and tell her not to miss a thing." "What? Yes, I know it'll piss her off, but that's part of the fun, isn't it?" He returned the phone to its stand. Molly Baker is the best private investigator this side of Chicago because she spent 18 years as a private investigator in Chicago before dropping everything and moving to Des Moines. The shit she saw in the Windy City would make your toes curl. Anyway, if they're there today, we'll know a lot of details by tomorrow. He agreed that I should get tested for STDs, but was worried about how long it would take to get the results. He assumed that my wife would want to be sexually active with me to cover her tracks. I assured him that I knew several doctors in my specialty and might be able to expedite the tests. The usual 5 to 10 days could be cut down to 2 or 3. I called my buddy, Dr. Stan Rosen, and asked him if I could stop by in the morning. Eli also set me up with a forensic accountant from their practice the next morning. He handed me a printout of what he knew I would need to bring, including our prenup. "Finally," he said, "if your wife changes her plans and comes home tonight, you will not be able to attend or confront her. We will address it as soon as we know the facts and the best course of action, but that won't be until next week at the earliest. If my hunch is correct, it will probably take us a couple weeks to establish the infidelity. It may not help us in court, but it certainly won't hurt us. Most Des Moines justices of the peace still disapprove of infidelity in marriage, so you should be on your best behavior. Be polite and courteous. To stay healthy, pretend to be sick if she wants to get into it any time over the weekend. Other than that, it's business as usual, okay? So you're telling me that calling her neck and hitting little Justin with a baseball bat is off limits?" "Yeah, something like that. Seriously, can you do that? Anything stupid would sink us." "Yeah, you have my word." That's enough. We shook hands and I left. I wish I could say I knew how to share the pain in my life, but that would be a lie. I still had my clothes from the trip, so I didn't need to go inside. I went to another gym, paid for a day pass, and worked out for about 2 hours until I could stand on my feet. Then I took a long steam and shower before checking into the Hyatt Hotel downtown, where I immediately ordered room service. My order included a bottle of Maker's Mark. After my second drink, I turned off my phone and put it away in the closet, knowing that once I got drunk, I would forget where it was. I didn't want to risk calling my whore wife while drunk. Tears, anger, frustration, and more tears all lasted until I passed out. The next morning, I woke up around 7 with the worst hangover I could remember since graduating from college. Forcing myself back to the gym, I took a long, steamy sip from my Yeti glass, which was filled with ice and some more Makers. Whoever came up with the solution for the morning, "bite the dog that bit you," must have known something, because after my shower, I felt almost human again. I spent an hour at the local Starbucks with my laptop, compiling a financial report for the accountant. By 8:30, I was in Rosen's office. I explained the situation to him, and he drew my blood himself. I'll personally take it to the lab and have them return the results to me. I'll have to put your name on them, but doctor-patient confidentiality will keep them confidential until you need them in court. Not your first rodeo, Doc? "Hell no, buddy," he replied in his best Duke voice. Seemed like everyone here loved John Wayne. I may have the results tomorrow by the end of the day, but it could be Monday. I can't put that much pressure on the lab staff. No worries, thanks, Stan. Back at the TS&S, I sat down at the desk with Lois Montgomery. She sorted through everything, kicked all the tires, and looked under the hood of my financial life for the better part of 2 hours. It was about as enjoyable as a prostate exam. When we were done, she took a deep breath and began to summarize. "Well, Mr. Clinton, there's good news and bad news. The prenup covers 80% of your assets in the event of divorce due to adultery. But I don't see you getting anything better than 50/50ths on the house. You can also avoid alimony and obviously won't pay alimony. But you may have to split retirement and savings. I'll prepare a full report and have it to Eli by the end of the day." I thanked her and headed upstairs to meet Eli Sharp again. He was sitting and chatting with a woman who looked to be in her late 40s. Molly Elkington was a pleasant-looking woman with short brown hair, deep brown eyes, and a friendly smile. Her handshake was firm and her gaze was penetrating. I felt like I would have to give an honest answer to any of her questions, so commanding was her gaze. Molly's jacket was hanging on the back of a chair, and I noticed a gun on her belt. Note to self, I thought, never mess with that woman. After a momentary exchange of pleasantries, Iowans, remember, were always friendly, she cut to the chase. "Mr. Clinton, your wife is in a relationship with medical student Justin Banks. Thanks to a very nice woman named Beth, I was able to install audio-visual devices in their room at the Hampton Hotel." She paused and looked up from her notes. "By the way, Beth asked me to mention that she has a lovely niece in Cedar Bluffs if you're interested in that in the future." I turned some of the videotape into photographs and enhanced the images to make your wife's identity unequivocally undeniable. They returned to the hotel around 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon and stayed there until 6 o'clock when they went out for dinner. They ate at a Chinese diner in West Des Moines and returned to the Hampton around 8. According to my boyfriend in the lobby, they checked out of the hotel around 10. Banks got into his car and she got into hers. Mrs. Clinton went home and is still there. She handed me a large file folder across the table. There are pictures and a thumb drive with video in it. I don't advise you to look at these, ever, but if you do, give yourself some time and space to deal with what you'll see and hear. I am truly sorry for Mr. Clinton. I hate cheaters for what they are and the damage they do. I did a little digging on you as well, and it became clear to me that you don't deserve the way your wife is betraying you. She and Sharp exchanged a few more remarks and ideas on how to proceed over the next few weeks to establish a pattern. Then she got up, threw on her jacket, shook my hand, wished me well, and walked out the door. Sharp went to his cabinet and poured me a shot of Knob Creek Limited Edition to calm my nerves. I tipped it into myself in one gulp and prepared for our conversation to continue. We discussed several aspects of the situation. I brought him up to speed on my blood tests, and we discussed the financial aspects of the impending divorce. What is your ultimate goal, Tyler? I mean, what's most important to you when the dust settles? I thought for a moment. I want to leave as soon as possible. I can be patient and not do anything stupid, but just the thought of being around her makes me nauseous. I really want you to do everything you can to make sure the terms of the prenup are honored. I can put up with the division of the house and other small assets, but there is no way I want her to come out of this in a strong financial position at my expense. Further, I would like to salvage what is left of my dignity. I want it to be known that it was she who was unfaithful, not me. No irreconcilable differences. I don't want to go after the hospital, as I work there too, and frankly, I don't see any fault on the part of Unity Point Healthcare. However, I do want it to be known that she and I broke up because she was having fun with Justin Banks behind my back. Finally, I want to hurt Banks. I don't know if you can convince the hospital that it's in their best interest to remove him from their program, but I really want him to drive a UPS truck in Goodland, Kansas for the rest of his days. Sharp replied to each. First of all, I think you're okay with the prenup. I'm cautiously optimistic. Second, we will make sure that the news of the reason for the breakup reaches everyone. However, that does not preclude the court from ordering counseling to see if the marriage can be saved. Assuming your wife has no interest in divorce, I would be dumbfounded if her attorney doesn't go for it. They are likely to behave aggressively, if for no other reason than to drag out the case in the hope that they can soften you up and get you to change your mind. Finally, you should temper your hopes that Banks' career will suffer. You're right, the hospital can cut its losses, especially if incoming students sign some sort of pledge regarding behavior during training. However, I wouldn't get my hopes up on that. Tyler, you're going to have to go home in the next day or so. You might be able to come up with an excuse to stay away for most of the weekend, but you have to come back soon and play the happy husband like your life depends on it. One sniff of what you know, and we run the risk of her going on the offensive before we're fully prepared. I take you at your word that you will not go near Banks under any circumstances. If you think you'll crack, I'll call Molly and ask her to put one of her guys on you for a while. I assured the lawyer that I would behave accordingly, even if I had to bite my lip until it bled. It was Friday early afternoon when I left Sharp's office. I sat in my car for 30 minutes trying to figure out how to drive home without blabbing. I couldn't see any way to succeed, so I did the next best thing I could determine. I pulled onto southbound Interstate 35 again, heading toward Kansas City. Lynn was waiting for me at home around 7. After driving about 90 minutes, I pulled into the small town of Bethany, Missouri, and found the local tire shop. Behind the counter was a 40-year-old guy wearing a shirt with the name Ed embroidered on it. He looked content reading his Sports Illustrated and was in no mood to be bothered with work late on a Friday night. As if I didn't care about that. Can I help you? Yeah, I need 4 new tires. Ed took a deep breath of frustration. Apparently, the Chiefs' offensive line situation for next season was now more appealing than making money. He stood up and headed for my car. These tires have at least 10,000 more miles to go. You don't need new treads. He looked disgruntled. He had no idea what real disgruntled looked like. Look, Ed, I'm a little fanatical about my car, and I don't care about the price. Can you put new tires on it or not? He muttered to himself as he walked back into the house and started up his 2005 desktop. Not today, but I can have them in by 10 tomorrow morning. He then pulled out a small calculator. With shipping, installation, and taxes, it'll cost you $1,455. Great, I said, do it. He looked at me like I had 3 heads, but still typed the order. Okay, all done. I'll see you in the morning. Without waiting for a response, he went back to his SI article. I pulled back onto the highway and checked into the Super 8 motel for the whopping sum of $78 a night. I plopped down on the less than comfortable bed and called Lynn. You're almost home, babe. I can't wait to see you. She was pretty chipper after 2 days of fun with Justin. Sorry, Lynn, I lied, but I just blew 2 tires by running over some crap that fell out of a semi-trailer on the highway. I'm stuck in a little Missouri town called Bethany. They can put new tires on me, but not until tomorrow. I won't be home until the middle of the day, in case you want to invite Justin over tonight and sleep with him in our marital bed. I didn't say that last sentence out loud, but I really wanted to. Damn, Ty, are you okay? Nothing hit the windshield or anything? No, I'm fine, but I'm having Taco Bell for dinner tonight and breakfast in the morning. Sorry for the delay, Lynn. Me too, but the important thing is that you're okay. I miss you madly and was hoping to jump on your bones tonight. I think I can wait until tomorrow. Please be safe for the rest of the trip and go home to your loving wife as soon as possible, Buster. I will, Lynn. I'm sorry, but I'm a little tired and still a little woozy from the blowout. I'm going to drink these 2 bottles of beer I bought at the Jiffy Mart and go to bed. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Okay, Ty, I love you. Good night, Lynn. I knew that at some point I would have to lie some more and respond to the I love you too with sincerity in my voice, but it wouldn't be tonight. I had no way of knowing if she picked up on my lack of response, but at that moment I didn't care. I walked over to the desk and opened the envelope Molly had given me. It showed my wife cheating on me with Justin. After recovering and brushing my teeth, I went back to the scene of the crime and inserted the flash drive. Opening the program, I saw an entire video of my wife having fun with Justin. After an hour of excruciating emotional pain, I began to feel the rage building up inside me. Yes, I was heartbroken. She was selfish and disrespectful, could not describe what I had just witnessed. My anger at Justin would surely grow, but at the moment I was filled with white-hot anger at the woman who I thought loved me and had committed to being my faithful wife. In the 8 years of our marriage, and the year before that when we were engaged, I had never seriously considered being with another woman. I don't mean to say that I never looked or had a fleeting thought. I wouldn't mind jumping on her bones when I saw a beautiful woman. I am a man just like everyone else. However, it never occurred to me to disregard the vows I made to my wife or to hurt her with adultery. I began to remember how the prenup had bothered her. She was offended that I had even suggested that she could not be trusted. I now realized that she was a narcissist, concerned only with herself and her pleasure. She didn't seem to understand the kind of commitment I thought love required. So yes, this revelation broke my heart. But I was also furious. There was no way this was going to go unheeded. No way that was the final word. The next couple weeks were going to be tough. But screw her. Now I would play my part. All with the intention of getting away from that bitch as soon as possible. And Dr. Justin, her big stud, would pay too. The next morning I had a couple fast food tacos for breakfast. I wasn't lying about being stuck at Taco Bell. 2 cups of coffee helped wash that taste away as I headed out to meet my new friend Ed and pick up 4 new tires. In the morning, Ed was less grumpy. He smiled when I walked in. I guess he realized he could sell my tires for a few $100 in cash and pocket it without the IRS finding out anything. On the wall hung a couple of deer heads and a picture of him squatting next to a dead deer with a bow across his lap. Maybe he'll use the money to buy himself a new compound bow for next season. I don't know why, but the thought made me feel a little better. By 11:30 a.m., I had 4 new tires, and I was out of excuses to head home. During the ride, I started thinking about how I could mess with Lynn's head. The thought of touching her made me cringe. Before heading home, I made one stop near Des Moines. I pulled up to the house around 1:30. Lynn's car was in place. I walked in the front door and heard Siri playing some light jazz. It sounded like Norman Brown's Just Chillin' album. I rounded the corner and walked into the kitchen where Lynn, swaying to the beat of the music, was washing dishes. She must not have heard me come in. I grabbed her. Damn, Ty, you scared the shit out of me. Let me go, you bastard. I just left a mark on her neck. Maybe it would be Dr. Banks' turn to be jealous. Surprises and novelties, yes. Neanderthal, no. What the hell, Ty? I bet you put marks on my neck and I'll be embarrassed in the operating room on Monday. That's not what I meant, Ty. It's just that you scared me. I guess I overreacted. I'm so glad you're home. Come on, let's go upstairs. I instantly let her go, turned around, picked up my bag, and headed up the stairs. Just forget it, Lynn. Maybe you can just tell the gang that your idiot husband got carried away and rudely hurt your feelings. I had never spoken to Lynn like that before, and since I was standing with my back to her and not waiting for a response, I couldn't see the look on her face. All she said was, "Whatever you say." I unpacked my bag, took a quick shower, changed into my Saturday clothes, and headed down the stairs. When I got downstairs, Lynn was sitting at the kitchen table texting. She put her phone face down on the table and looked up at me. There was no forgiveness in her eyes, but the anger had dissipated. I guessed who she was texting with. Ty, Leave it alone, Lynn. I've been gone for a week, 2 days more than I intended. All I could think about was getting back to you, but apparently my coming over and trying to spice up the relationship didn't meet with your approval. You were the one who told me to hurry home so you could touch my bones. I apologize for not understanding how that was supposed to happen. Enjoy the rest of your day and evening, I'm leaving. I didn't give her time to respond, but I'm sure she was stunned. Even when we argued, I never lashed out or spoke in harsh tones. We disagreed, of course, but for the most part it was measured and respectful. I just walked out the door, got in my car, and drove away. I went to the clubhouse, changed into casual golf clothes, and hit a couple bags of balls. After that, I worked on my pathetic pitch. I sadly thought that with the advent of bachelorhood, I would have some serious time to shave a couple strokes off my game. Unfortunately, given the circumstances, that didn't do much to improve my mood. A couple hours later, I settled into the men's locker room, grabbed a beer, and chatted about this and that with a handful of fellow doubles players. One of them was Tom Harris, a local investment banker who was a good friend of mine. While we were talking, I learned that his wife Connie was out of town for the weekend visiting her relatives in Denver, and I invited him over for dinner. We went to the Mulberry Stith Tavern downtown just as it opened at 4 p.m. We had a couple glasses of bourbon and sampled their top-notch burgers. They were showing the Cardinals and Mets game on the big screen. With all my hectic pace, eating a burger and discussing pitching staffs with a friend made me feel like a little piece of normalcy, and for that I was grateful. We left around 7 p.m., and I checked my cell phone. There were 6 text messages from Lynn about 30 minutes apart, starting about an hour after I left. Ty, I'm so sorry. Please come home so we can talk. Ty, where are you? Come home. Stop ignoring me, Ty. I know you're seeing these messages. Go home now. What, Ty? Okay, but don't say I didn't ask you to come home. I'm not the one acting like a stubborn asshole. No, I thought to myself. You're just the lying, cheating slut. I didn't say anything back. Instead, I went to the local movie theater. I saw a new movie called Firestar, about a girl who discovered she could set shit on fire just by using her brain. I wish I could have found her and taken her to Banks. The movie ended just before 10 and I headed home. As I pulled up to the house, I saw that Lynn's car was gone. I can't say I was disappointed, but I also realized that she was probably being comforted by her lover. I went back to the club and had a couple drinks for the night, then got home around 11:30. Lynn was back. She was sitting in our bed. Thanks, I can't believe you left and didn't answer my texts. Where did you disappear to? Her tone was firm, indicating that she considered herself the offended party. Well, in order, club, dinner with Tom Harris, movie, home, back to the club again since you weren't here, then back again. And you? She lowered her eyes for a moment, not meeting my gaze. Nowhere in particular. Have you been with anyone? Not really. Met a friend at Grounds for Celebration Coffee Shop. With who? Does it matter? We need to talk about what happened earlier. Okay, talk. Ty, I'm sorry I reacted the way I did, but your aggression scared me and I was confused. You threw me off balance and made me defensive. Your groping and stroking didn't turn me on. Part of my love for you is based on how much you respect me, and your actions didn't feel like love and respect. Lynn, I admit that my actions were different, but the fact that you asked me to spice it up a bit a while ago seemed to indicate that you wanted to bring something new to our physical relationship. Something more radical. If that's not it, then explain it to me so I can see where you're going with this. That's what I said, but I was thinking more romantic. A candlelit dinner or a weekend at the beach with lots of hugs and caresses. I'm sorry, Lynn, but we've done all of those things many times over the last 8 years. Weekends away, long walks holding hands, romantic conversations by the fireplace. I don't believe what you're saying. It doesn't add up. It's true, but maybe in new places. Nonsense, Lynn. I remember our conversation very well, and you can't rewrite history. If you've changed your mind, say so, but you don't have to lie and pretend you weren't suggesting I spice things up physically. Ty, why are you acting like this? You're so literal and dogmatic. I may have said it, but how can you interpret it as bend me over the counter, or leave a bruise on my neck for everyone to see? Lynn, do you remember what you were wearing when we were talking? What? No, why does it matter? It's important because it's relevant to our conversation. I was working in the yard, had just showered and came out of the bedroom. I've never seen you like this before. I'm pretty sure we didn't come up for air for at least the next hour. So how do I go from this to a romantic weekend on the beach holding hands? I'll let you pick 10 husbands of your choice, tell them this story, and ask them how they would interpret your invitation. If at least 9 of them don't say something like what I did today, I'll buy you any new car you want. That's just ridiculous, Ty. No, not only is it not absurd, it's absolutely accurate. When you dress up for your husband and ask him to spice things up, it's not because you're in the mood for romance. Again, you're trying to change what happened to make you right and me wrong. Ty, your stubbornness is getting us nowhere. Why don't we just let it go and you come to bed and just hold me? Sorry, Lynn, that won't work. If you don't like that kind of behavior from me, fine. I won't try again. But you don't have to act stupid with me and demand that it's my fault. You care more about people seeing that I gave you a hickey than you do about my feelings or opinion. I'm not interested in keeping you, so you can assume I've admitted I was wrong. Good night, Lynn. With those words, I turned and headed for the guest bedroom. Ty, come back! I'm not done talking to you, damn it! I ignored her, assuming my first attempt at FWLH had been successful. I avoided contact with her without giving myself away. I highly doubted she was putting 2 and 2 together and getting 4. She was too shy to even flirt with the idea that I knew she was cheating on me. There have been chilly days in our marriage, but on Sunday we just froze. We avoided each other. We didn't talk. I spent most of the morning at the club and the afternoon working in the yard. I went to bed before she did, and when she came into the bedroom, I was already in bed. I'm not sleeping in the same bed with you until you apologize, Ty. I don't mind, Lynn. I'm not the unreasonable type, so I think we'll spend every other night in the master bedroom. It's my bed as well as yours, so I'll sleep here tonight. If you don't like it, you know where the spare room is. Tomorrow night I'll sleep there and you can be here. I don't agree to that. Go and sleep in the guest room until you come to your senses. Lynn, I have no idea why you think you have the last word on everything, but you don't. We are equals and I treat us as such. I'm going to sleep in this bed tonight, and what you do is up to you. Bastard! She hissed as she left for the guest room. The beginning of the week went the same way. We barely spoke to each other. She kept trying to push my buttons, but I couldn't deal with it. Monday night, she told me how she had been humiliated in the operating room when her coworkers teased her about a hickey. I shrugged, showing that I didn't care. Tuesday morning, Stan Rosen called and asked me to stop by his office. First, the bad news. You have a very mild form of chlamydia. You probably haven't experienced any symptoms. More than half of men who contract the disease do not experience any. The good news is that with treatment, the disease will go away quickly, although you will need to be rechecked in about 3 months. Maybe I should ask you if you know how you contracted it? Of course, Stan, I contracted it from my wife. I trust our doctor. Confidentiality is respected here. I've never slept with another woman since the year before Lynn and I got engaged. Last Thursday, I found out that she was having an affair with another man. I can only assume that she contracted it from him. Unless she's had other lovers that I don't know about. He heard the sadness in my voice. Well, I'm sorry as hell to hear that, Tyler. I always thought you had a good marriage. I'll put you on your usual dose of azithromycin, and like I said, it should go without a problem. You'll need to tell Lynn about it and abstain from sex for the next few weeks, just to be safe. No, it's not a problem, Stan, but I'm going through a serious transition here, and I'll need to talk to a lawyer about sharing this information with my wife. How serious could the infection be? It doesn't kill, but if left untreated, it can cause serious health problems, up to and including the loss of a woman's ability to reproduce. Depending on when Lynn contracted the infection, she is at term. A couple weeks isn't a problem, but the longer, the higher the risk. Besides, Ty, as much pain as you're in, you don't want to live with the responsibility of possibly jeopardizing someone else's health. You're right, Stan. I can't live with myself if I sink to that level just because I'm in pain. But let me ask you this. I haven't noticed any symptoms in her, so is it safe to say it's still early and she doesn't know what she's contracted yet? Maybe, maybe not. Some women never feel symptoms, but that doesn't mean the disease can't do serious damage. I can't tell you what to do in that case, but I will say that waiting more than 48 hours would be wrong. We shook hands and he said he would take the prescription to the local pharmacy, which I didn't frequent. I appreciated his concern for my reputation. An hour later, I was in Eli Sharp's office explaining everything to my attorney. He laughed at my FWLH strategy, but warned me not to be so obvious as to give myself away. He became much more serious when he heard about STDs. Well, that changes things, he said with a sigh. I know we sharks are lawyers, but even I can't afford to keep anyone in the dark when there are serious health risks involved. It was my turn to giggle at his successful lawyer joke. Since Doc gave you 48 hours, you'd better act in 24. Let me consult with a couple buddies I respect, and I expect you here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock sharp. Lynn didn't get home until about 10 that evening. Her shift ended at 6. If she expected me to demand to know where she'd been, she was in for a disappointment. I was watching an episode of Only Murders in the Building when she walked in. She looked into the den for a moment, sighed, and headed upstairs without saying a word. Under any other circumstances, she would have sat next to me and munched on popcorn, and I would have brought her some white wine. The thought that this would never happen to her again for the rest of my life caused me to feel an overwhelming sense of loss. I was betrayed, and I wasn't going to stay with the cheater who betrayed me in our marriage. But I loved her. A part of me still did. And that part grieved for what was gone forever. The next morning, I was sitting in the conference room of TC&C Company. Sharp was present along with Molly's private investigator and one of his lawyers, Mick Sawyer. We don't like the timing, Ty, but it's time to pull the trigger. Everyone agrees that STDs change the picture. Have you thought about how you want to tell her yet? Yes, I have. One of my goals is to get her off balance until she's served. What if you guys are privy to the fact that I'm notifying her, but for now she won't know the source of the information? Everyone at the table looked at each other skeptically, but remained silent, waiting for the continuation. What if I send her OB/GYN an anonymous tip that one of her patients, Lindsay Clinton, has chlamydia? Wouldn't she be obligated under her hypocritical oath to inform her patient? Later, you guys could confirm that it was me. Molly could testify that I wrote the message, confirm the date and time. I would be acting with a reasonable degree of good faith, since my doctor required me to notify her within 48 hours, and I did it in less than 30. It may be treacherous, but she will have the opportunity to get the medical attention she needs. Wouldn't that pass the smell test in court? There was a pause. Molly and Mick waited for Sharp to think it over. After a few minutes, he pronounced, Not perfect, not even good, but not terrible either. It will make you look petty, but not negligent or criminal. Under the right circumstances and the right judge, it can be fine. However, it is also incomplete. Any judge will want to know who knew of your actions and what steps they took to dissuade you. So, Tyler, I'll tell you right now, I don't think you should do it, and it's a bad idea. Neither do I, Molly said. I agree with Eli Tyler, Mick retorted, grinning from ear to ear. You shouldn't be doing this. On top of that, Sharp snapped back, eventually she'll put 2 and 2 together and realize that if it wasn't Banks, it must have been you. She'll realize that you know about her affair. Yeah, but it'll take a day or two so I can get ready to meet her. Thank you all for the advice. However, I am determined. So when I leave here, I will pick up the phone and send a message to Dr. Pamela Connors. In that case, I want to be a witness, Molly replied. I don't want to be told later that I just believed you would do everything, but never checked that it happened. We discussed a few more details, after which I left. 40 minutes later, Dr. Connors received a strange message from an unknown source. On the other end turned out to be private investigator Molly Elkington. Doctor? Connors, I have chosen to remain anonymous, but I am aware that one of your patients, Mrs. Lindsay Clinton, has a sexually transmitted disease, chlamydia. Now that you have this information, I trust you to immediately act as her attending physician and offer assistance to your patient. Thank you. Finished with the conversation, I smashed the phone to pieces and later that afternoon, on my way home, threw it into a pond about 5 miles from my house. There was no one nearby to witness my complete disregard for Iowa's littering laws. About the time I was discarding the burner, Molly was parking outside Dr. Connor's office when a black Honda Accord pulled into one of the parking spaces. Lynn got out of it, looking a little disheveled, and entered the office. 45 minutes later, she came out looking even worse. Molly followed her to the local pharmacy where she picked up a small prescription bag. Shortly thereafter, Lynn returned home. I sat on the porch and watched the coverage of the Cardinals' 10-0 victory over the Royals. Since we still didn't talk much, she didn't say hello and just headed up the stairs. About half an hour later, she came out onto the porch, freshly scrubbed, and abruptly lowered herself next to me, letting out a deep sigh. Ty, why don't we call a truce and go back to our place? I don't know, Lynn. How do you propose we declare a truce? How about we just end this argument and leave it at that? I'm not sure that works for me, Lynn. Why not, Ty? She looked like she genuinely wanted to know. Perhaps the revelation about her STDs had jolted her a little. I'm happy to forgive and move on, Lynn. I've apologized several times for misinterpreting your spice it up a bit comments, but as far as I know, you still don't think you've done anything you need to apologize for. Thus, refusing to do so would seem to imply that you win and I lose. I'm not trying to come out on top, Lynn, but I think we're equally at fault for the last few days, but you don't see it that way. Fine, she replied with slight irritation in her voice. I'm really sorry about that. So, is everything okay now? No, Lynn, it's not okay. I've known you for almost 10 years, and I know when you're not saying what you think you're saying. Your words may be right, but your tone shows that your heart hasn't changed. Tell me I'm wrong, Lynn. Explain where you're wrong, and we can move on. She looked at me for a brief moment with sadness in her eyes. I thought that maybe she was going to tell me about the whole episode of her cheating. I didn't expect a sincere apology given what I heard on the tapes, but maybe I was wrong about her. Would I be able to forgive her and work on our marriage? Honestly, the thought scared the hell out of me. But I shouldn't have worried. Her eyes gave her away as she returned to her righteous indignation. She was still blaming me. At that moment, I realized without a shadow of a doubt that it was over between us. You're just so stubborn, Tyler Adam Clinton. I apologized and you threw it back in my face because it wasn't up to your standards. Okay? Okay? You're the one who led us down a dead end, and it's your fault if we don't find a way to work this out. Well, Lindsay Abbott Simon, she said, deliberately using her maiden name. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I can see in your eyes and hear the tone of your voice that you may be using the right words, but in your heart of hearts, you believe you are innocent and I am guilty. You are convinced that I am proud and unreasonable, so I'm offering you a deal. If you can find even one of our close friends who truly believes that I am an arrogant jackass who never apologizes or admits his guilt, I will accept your conclusion. She rose to her feet, glaring at me, and stomped off the porch and into the house. I took a deep breath. It had been almost a week since I had discovered her blatant disregard for her vows in our marriage. The next 2 weeks would be nearly impossible. It was time to look for options. The next morning, I was in my boss's office. Connie Silverton was a fair but tough boss. You don't become the CEO of a major medical facility without it. It was hard to do, but I laid out my situation to her. I needed advice and help to get me through the next 14 or so days until I could serve Lynn with divorce papers. Connie's response was professional but caring. First of all, Tyler, I'm very sorry for your situation. My parents divorced when I was 10 years old and it was horrible. However, before we get started, I need to know that you will weather this storm and continue your fine work for me and Unity. I can't help it if I know the situation is about to blow up and go to hell. Connie, I can't say I'll be completely fine for the next couple weeks, but I truly love my job and the people I work with. I look forward to helping you in the future. I'm deeply hurt, but I'm not dead, and I have no intention of giving up my career for the woman who betrayed me. If I can manage to tone it down a bit, I promise you I'll be at your place 100%. I think I know you pretty well, Tyler, and I know I can trust you to be honest with me. There's a conference for hospital CFOs next week in Washington, D.C. In the past, I have declined your requests to attend the conference because of the cost. However, this year I think it would be in Unity's best interest for you to go. It will begin on Monday and end on Thursday afternoon. As I recall, you have family on the East Coast, so why don't I approve your participation, and then you can stay the weekend with your family. That part you will have to pay out of your own pocket. Deal? Boss, I'd give you a hug, but I know you'd probably spank me, and I don't want Mike to take my thanks the wrong way. Mike's hubby was a retired Ranger colonel. But know this, I'll never forget your kindness, and you'll never regret helping me. She smiled as warmly as I'd never seen her smile before. I'll do the paperwork today, Tyler. If you make it by next Sunday, I'll buy you a week. Now get your ass out of here and think about how we're going to sign a new contract with our nurses. Their union reps are negotiating hard. I stood up and smiled. Consider it done, boss. By the way, if I can save 5% on my next contract, can we talk about my year-end bonus? Her habitual look became serious again, which told me it was time to leave. I only had to make it 3 days before I had to leave for the conference. With any luck, I would only have to live in suspense for 2 or 3 days after I returned. I managed to focus on the rest of the day and do a good job, even pissing off Jody Meyer, the nurses' union representative, when I informed her that their latest offer was not true. Let her cook over the weekend and next week, I thought to myself. Maybe she'll be a little more pressured when her parents find out she doesn't have a contract and isn't even expected to. On the way home, I called my father and brother to let them know I'd be in the area the coming weekend and would love to hang out with them. I apologized for such a short notice, but both promised to carve out time to meet together. I didn't feel like sharing the bad news with them, but on the other hand, I knew they would be supportive when they heard the whole story. My last call before hitting the road was to attorney Eli Sharp. I quickly brought him up to speed, and he informed me that this was the perfect opportunity to get 1 or 2 of Mary's men on Lynn to get some more evidence of her treachery. When I arrived, Lynn was not at home, which under normal circumstances would be unusual. However, nothing had been unusual in my life for over a week now. It was the second day of her 3-day vacation, so we should have had something planned by now. At this point, she could have been having fun with Justin or some other guy for all I knew. That was when I first realized that she could have or had other men. Now that would be nice, I thought to myself. What if there's a slut running around Banks behind his back? Maybe I should send him an anonymous message urging him to keep an eye on his cheating slut so I don't become her next victim? I decided to go for a run. I had done a little cross-country running in high school, though I had never been great at it. However, running 3 to 5 miles a couple times a week helped me clear my head. My route was mostly to and from the golf course. A couple good hills on the way there and back gave the run a nice cardio element. Today I ran more intensely, trying to exhaust myself so I could possibly sleep that night. My world was crumbling around me, and since I had gone into survival mode, I rarely allowed myself to slow down to assess my reality. It was good to run and think. What depressed me was Lynn's cheating. 9 days ago, I'd been in love with a woman who I thought loved me as much or more. Discovering that her vows didn't mean a damn thing to her shook me to the core. How much of this is my fault? I wondered, climbing hill number 1. No problem in a marriage lies entirely on one person. Perhaps I was too busy or preoccupied with my career, not giving it enough time and attention. Other questions swirled through my mind as I continued on my way. How would she react? Would she ever admit to what she had done? Would she make excuses or ask for forgiveness? I knew I wouldn't stay in the marriage after such a deep betrayal, but how would I feel about her when I saw her in the hospital? Would I become angry seeing her seeing other men? Would she stick around or would she leave town? I couldn't imagine her leaving as if defeated. She'd be too stubborn for that. No, I assumed she would stay and try to prove to me that I had been a complete fool to divorce her. It dawned on me that if I was thinking so much, then I wasn't running hard enough. By the top of the second hill, I was no longer preoccupied with thoughts of my slutty ex-wife. I was just looking for little things like oxygen. When I got home, I was completely exhausted, which was actually the purpose of the run. I walked up and down the street for about 20 minutes, cooling off, and then hopped in the shower. Then I put on my swim trunks, grabbed a beer, and headed for the hot tub, as my calf muscles were letting me know they hadn't appreciated the last hour or so. Lynn was still nowhere to be seen. Later, around 11 p.m., I ate dinner, watched 2 episodes of Ted Lasso, and finally crawled into bed. Lynn never showed up, wrote, or called. I did her the courtesy of leaving her alone. It was the only time in our entire marriage that we had been separated for more than 12 hours without contacting or knowing where the other was. I took 2 melatonin tablets and 4 Motrin tablets, as my collarbones were giving me no rest with their complaints. I slept until 7 the next morning. Before I went down the stairs in the morning, I noticed that Lynn's door was closed. Apparently, she had come home the night before. I listened for a moment. Nothing moved. I drank my coffee and ate a couple bagels, showered, changed clothes, and headed out to the golf course. The weather in Des Moines in late May can be amazing, and today was no exception. I teed off a few balls on the course and joined a couple buddies for an 18-ball game and then lunch. By 3 p.m., I had run out of excuses to stay here and headed home. I didn't text or call Lynn all day, and she ignored me too. I guess we waited to see who blinked first. When I got there, she wasn't home, and I started repeating what had happened the night before. Sunday morning was the same, but I was heading out of town on the 4 p.m. SWA flight to Reagan International. I spent most of the morning cutting grass and working in the flower beds, something Lynn and I usually did together. When she finally showed up around 11 a.m., she just looked at me through the door and went back inside. Screw this, I thought as I gathered my things. If she wants to stay on the sidelines and be quiet, then let her be. But there was no way in hell I was going to let her run the game. I left for the airport without leaving her a note or message to let her know where I was going or how long I would be gone. I figured she probably wouldn't even notice I'd been gone all week. I hoped she would notice, and I hoped she'd bring asshole Justin over and sleep with him in our bed so I could add that to her list of naughty things she'd done. On Tuesday, 2 things happened. First, I got a call from Eli telling me that Mary's relatives already have some new pictures and videos of Lynn and Banks. No doubt they were doing well. The second incident surprised me. Lynn finally texted me. The message exchange was not polite. Where are you? In Washington. What? I'm at a conference of hospital CFOs that Connie asked me to attend. When were you going to tell me, you inconsiderate bastard? Whenever you got home before 1 or 2 in the morning and didn't talk to your husband, who'd been waiting for you since 6 both Friday and Saturday. Where were you every night? She ignored the question. Ty, I was scared to death that something had happened to you. I can't believe you did that to me. Why didn't you just text me? I wrote and you didn't write back. Lie #1. If you texted me and I didn't respond, did you call the police? What? When you were scared to death that something had happened to me, did you call the police? Oh, well, no, I guess I didn't think of that. But still, you're such an asshole for not communicating with me. What about my boss or my dad or my brother or any of our friends? Who have you been contacting trying to track me down to make sure I'm okay? I've contacted several people. Don't try to blame this on me, Ty. Lie #2. Name them. What? Name who you texted or called so I can check. I will not tolerate insults from an insensitive and uncaring asshole like you. Well, Lynn, you may think I'm an asshole, insensitive and uncaring, but I'm not a liar like you. If you were really concerned about my well-being, you would have texted me, and we both know you didn't. Second, you would have reached out to some of our friends, co-workers, or family members, which we know you didn't. What we don't know is where you were Friday or Saturday night. Care to elaborate on your whereabouts? Maybe you have something to confess to me, dear wife? You're just insanely stubborn, Ty, and right now you're just pissing me off. Well, Lynn, you don't seem to be capable of telling the truth or taking responsibility for what you've done or are doing. So one more thing, screw you. There was no response on the other end, just radio silence. Was she beginning to suspect he knew something? Did she feel any guilt for her treacherous act? Did she consider her act of infidelity? I realized I was breathing hard and sweating like I'd been working out for an hour. I pulled myself together, showered, and headed to the conference. The rest of the week went okay considering my marriage was over and I was an emotional wreck. I managed to make some good acquaintances and attend a couple informative panels. The weekend with my dad and brother went well, but hard. Both tried to be understanding, but neither of them shared my experience. My mom passed away about 3 years ago at the age of 63 from a rare form of cancer. She left holding the hand of the man who had loved and cherished her for 41 years straight. My dad could understand my sadness, but not the pain of Lynn's duplicity. He thought she was crazy. My brother Elliot had already been married for 11 years to an amazing woman named Mary. Everything seemed to be going well for them and their 3 children, even when they hit some bumps in the road. Mary and Elliot still looked at each other with adoration and resolved their infrequent arguments quickly and without too much anger. My brother seemed to be on the same marital path as my father. I was happy for him. We played a couple games of golf, took in a game of National, and had a great lunch. I enjoyed socializing with my nephews. Sunday night came all too quickly when I hugged my dad on the side of the road at Reagan. He took my face in his hands, looking sternly into my eyes. I know it hurts like hell, son, but you'll get through this. Lynn has proven to be selfish and destructive, but you don't give up. Keep moving forward, one day at a time. I know it's true. The pain will subside. With those words, he gave me a hug, jumped into his Ford F-150, and drove back to Springfield, Virginia. By the time I arrived at DSM, it was almost noon. I headed into the office to iron out some details and to see if Jody Meyer had started to come out of the woodwork in our negotiations during the week of my absence. The good news? Her latest offer was much closer than the previous one. The gap was still there, but it was clear that the nurses didn't want a prolonged work stoppage and knew that Unity would behave reasonably at the bargaining table. Before leaving, I glanced into Connie's office. She looked up and gave me her usual look. What the hell are you going to waste my time for? I froze for a moment and smiled. Well? Hey, boss. Just wanted to say thanks again for last week. It was a good seminar. It was well worth the investment, and the time spent with my family was just what the doctor ordered. As if I care, Tyler, have you had time to do anything useful since you got back? Not much. Just went over the nurse's latest offer and thought I'd let you know that by the end of this week, we'll have a deal that we're happy with. No need to thank me. Get the hell out of my office, Tyler, and come back when you actually have something for me. I always liked that teasing, but today it seemed more important than usual. Before I turned to leave, I stopped. Hey, boss. Connie looked up. What? I love you too. I jumped out the door before the pen she was holding in her hand darted toward my face. Sometimes a normal life, working with people you love and respect, was the best medicine in the world. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe the pain would begin to subside. On the way home, I called my lawyer to see how our case was going. Within a minute, Eli Sharp was on the phone. Stop by my office at 7 tomorrow morning on your way to work, Ty. I think we're ready to pull the trigger. As sad as it is to admit, Lynn kept doing it with her idiot partner over the weekend. I won't reveal the details, although we do have some candid photos of her in a very revealing schoolgirl outfit at their favorite hotel. When I arrived, the house was dark, quiet, and empty. It seemed like it was over between Lynn and me. We had hardly seen each other for the past 3 weeks, and we hadn't had a normal conversation since I had left for a conference in Kansas City over 3 weeks ago. I realized how much I missed her. Not the slut she'd turned into, but the Lynn I'd married. Fun, curious, mischievous, beautiful, and strong-willed, she was the person I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. I dropped my bag in the laundry room, grabbed a beer, and settled in on the back porch as the sun disappeared in the west and the stars began their nightly dance. For all my anger at her betrayal, I found myself crying again. I knew that one day I would have no more tears for her or our marriage. I would never tolerate her duplicity and infidelity. If I could find a way to set Justin up, I would. My pride was wounded, but still intact. But tonight I allowed myself to mourn what was lost. By 10 p.m., I was beyond tired, so I headed upstairs, took a quick shower, and fell asleep 20 seconds after my head hit the pillow. Since we slept in separate beds, I didn't hear her come in. It could have been 5 minutes after I fell asleep, or it could have been 3 in the morning. I didn't know, and I didn't care. I got up and out the door around 5:30 a.m., wanting to get in a quick workout before meeting Silas and the team at 7. Lynn's car was parked in the driveway and the door to the guest room was closed. If I understood her schedule correctly, she had the first day of a 3-day shift. That was helpful. We wouldn't have to cross paths much in the coming week. Ty, good to see you. Come on in and have a seat, Eli greeted me. Super Private Detective Molly was in place, as was one of Silas's assistants, an older woman in her 50s named Peggy Simons. Her name was Peg. Molly smiled and said hello. Peg asked if I wanted coffee. After a minute or two, we got down to business. Sharp began. We'd like to put Lynn on trial at some point this week, Ty. Molly has received more than enough evidence showing your wife's infidelity. Repeating the same thing won't help our case, and you already owe Molly over $6,000, so I'd thank her, but I'd let her go spy elsewhere. He smiled as he said the last sentence. It was obvious they were good friends. In turn, Molly just patted Eli on the shoulder and got up to leave. I hope you get things settled as quickly and painlessly as possible, Tyler, she said as she shook my hand. I thanked her and told her that I sincerely hoped I never had to hire her in the future, but would be more than happy to tell anyone who needed her services where to find the best. Eli and I exchanged a few ideas on how, when, and where to service Lynn. I was hoping it could be done at work at a time when she and piece of shit Justin would be together in a room full of people. Probably at the end of the day on Thursday, since that would be her last day of work before her 3 days off. Eli felt that such a long wait was only playing into Lynn's hands. Waiting means giving her a chance to find out what's going on. You've kept your composure admirably over the past few weeks, Ty, but you must be at your limit now. May I suggest that we serve her tonight, or at the very least tomorrow? One of Molly's boys has been watching the hospital, so he'll have an idea of when is the best time to surprise her. I agreed that was reasonable. Last night I'd cried every tear I could shed over that lying bitch. I was ready for the final confrontation. My thoughts went back to my favorite Clint Eastwood movie Outlaw, when Jose confronts his 3 enemies. So guys, are you going to pull out your guns or just stand there and whistle Dixie? The challenge was thrown. The fight was on. Sharp also found an obscure state law that allowed me to sue Justin Banks for alienation of affection. Eli was sure it would go nowhere, but the embarrassment of having everyone at the hospital know about it could seriously hurt his relationships and career after medical school. I was in complete agreement. We finally agreed that Eli would call and give me a heads up when the case was done. I would be home on the back porch and talk to Lynn there. Sharp also wanted to have proof of this conversation in case things got out of hand. He asked Peg to see to it that one of Molly's boys set up surveillance equipment on our back porch and be in the car around the corner. If things got heated or Lynn got rowdy, he could call the police. I couldn't imagine Lynn going that crazy, but then again, 4 weeks ago I would have called you crazy if you suggested that my wife would cheat on me with a medical student. I spent the afternoon emailing Jody Meyer about the latest stumbling block in our contract negotiations. By 3 p.m., I was exhausted, but we reached an agreement. Neither of us were 100% satisfied, so it was probably a fair agreement. The nurses got a decent raise in base pay, overtime, and vacation days, and the hospital got a 5-year contract instead of the 3-year contract INA had hoped for. Even Connie had to smile when I put the papers on her desk to take to the board of directors. I was a 5-minute walk from home when my phone rang. It was Eli Sharp. So, Barrister, how are we doing today? Sharp grinned. Sorry, Ty, I know it's hard for you, and I'm not trying to make your situation any easier, but I've just heard from Molly. She's volunteered to take care of Lynn and Banks. They had just undergone a lengthy surgery and were in the staff lounge with another nurse, the surgeon who was operating, and Mike Devlin, the head of surgery for all of Unity Healthcare. He came in to observe as the chief surgeon was Alex Greer, one of the best cutters in the world. Devlin and Greer went to Yale together at one time, so they socialize a lot. Anyway, Molly showed up in the staff lounge looking like Molly, which would scare almost anyone, and apparently medical student Banks was offended by the presence of a non-medical person in their personal space. He stood up and asked her if she was lost. When she said she wasn't, he replied something to the effect that the area was off-limits to anyone outside the medical staff, and she should leave. Now I'm quoting Molly. Can you believe this little piece of shit talks to me like that? So I pushed him back in his chair and leaned in closer. I'm pretty sure that's when he started peeing. I threw my best Chicago look at him and said, Are you that married woman? The goddamn piece of shit known as Justin Banks? He barely squeezed out a yes. Well, son, you've been served. She continued. The room got pretty damn quiet, and the other four were staring at me. When I turned my attention to Lynn's roguish slut, I thought she was going to melt. I took a much nicer tone with her, but I guess everyone could hear the sarcasm in my voice. And you, sweetheart, are you Lynn Clinton, Tyler Clinton's wife? She nodded her head affirmatively and replied in a barely audible whisper, Yes. Well, in that case, I assume you are very familiar with Mr. Banks, and you, my dear, have been served as well. Molly told me it was one of the best moments she'd had in the last few years. She wanted to savor it while it lasted, so she hesitated to leave. Dr. Devlin turned to Banks. Young man, if you have done what I think you have done, you will never practice medicine in Iowa or anywhere else, if I can help it. He also turned to Lynn, putting two and two together, and addressed her directly. Please tell me you're not that stupid, Lynn. She hung her head, and as Molly was leaving, she heard Devlin say, Lynn, you'd better go home and not come back to work until one of your union representatives speaks to you. Sharp finally stopped giggling and pulled himself together. So, Tyler, your wife got the summons and is on her way home. Molly's boyfriend is about a block away and will be set to work. Get ready, son. I think you're in for one of the worst moments of your life. Be firm, but don't yell and scream. If it gets to be too much, just go for a walk or go to another room. You'll get through this with Tyler. The hardest part is over. We chatted some more, discussing the way forward. I got the impression that Eli wanted to stay with me as long as possible, helping me prepare emotionally for the potential shitstorm that was about to erupt. As we were about to finish talking, I heard Lynn's car pull up to the driveway. I thanked Sharp and told him I'd call him when we were done to get an update. Lynn walked through the door and found me on the back porch. She looked terrible. She had obviously cried her eyes out on the way home. When I looked up, I thought a mixture of sadness and rage was staring back at me. She started. How long have you two known each other? 3 bloody miserable weeks, Lynn. How did you find out? Not that it matters, but I came home early from a conference in KC to surprise my wife and spend some time with the woman I loved and cherished. When I arrived early Friday morning, you weren't here. I checked my Glimpse app and saw that you were somewhere near the airport. From that point on, things went downhill fast. That morning when you called me about the pen? Yes. You lied to me. You set me up. Well, I guess if anyone knows what lying is, it's you, since you've perfected it to an art form in your dealings with me. But yes, I lied. I wasn't trying to set you up. I was trying to determine if my world was really crumbling around me. Unfortunately, it is. She was silent for a moment. I didn't want to ask her anything. Now that everything was out in the open, I just wanted to deal with whatever had to be done and get away from her. Finally, she continued. I can't believe you made me service myself at work in front of my coworkers. I was humiliated. Take a number and get in line, Lynn. That was just cruel, Ty. Your approach leaves us no chance to sort things out. I repeat, Lynn, if anyone recognizes cruelty, it's you. Your betrayal is the cruelest thing anyone has ever done to me in my life. No matter how long you cheated on me with Justin Banks, you unleashed cruelty after cruelty on the man you said you loved. Also, let me be very, very clear. I have no desire to build a relationship with you on any level. I'm divorcing you and I'm not looking back. You must be delusional if you think you can treat me like this, and I'll want anything to do with you. Finally, she sat down on the other end of the couch from me. But Ty, I love you. I understand what you're saying, but I never meant to hurt you or be cruel to you. Justin was just a little fling. I know it was wrong and I shouldn't have done it, but I know we can work through this as adults and grow stronger. Lynn, I'm trying to keep my composure, but you just ruined our marriage. Any reasonable adult can understand that. Yes, I've seen pictures and videos of several of your escapades at the Hampton Inn airport. You can't be such a child to think that if you play the part of the grieving wife, I'll just ignore the pain and hurt you brought into my life. I can't believe you were spying on me and Justin Ty. Why didn't you just talk to me about it when you found out? I could have ended our relationship with him right away. You took it to the extreme. Lynn, I shouldn't have spied on you. There shouldn't have been anything secret between us, especially infidelity. Why would I talk to you about anything? Nothing that comes out of your mouth will ever be believable to me again. Extreme is the infidelity of your faithful husband, Lynn. Look in the damn mirror for a moment and pray that you see the truth. I had no idea if my suddenly idiotic wife understood any of this or not. Nothing seemed to get through to her. She was just looking for an easy way out to brush off her betrayal. Every time she opened her mouth, more nonsense flew out. Ty, divorce is the last thing we both want. Not only do we live here, but we work at the same hospital. What will people think? It would be so embarrassing if we got divorced while living and working in the same place. And also how humiliating for both of us if coworkers and friends hear some of these details. Come on, baby, you realize how bad that would be for both of us. Lynn, I've been living with embarrassment and humiliation since that Friday morning when I saw you and the jerk walk out of the Hampton Inn, right after you lied to me on the phone about where you were and what you were doing. The divorce will be a welcome relief to me because the attention will be directed at you too when people find out about your betrayal and debauchery. I'd ask you if Baby Banks was your first and only extramarital affair, but no matter what you say, I won't believe you. Thank God we don't have children yet. The thought of raising kids with you makes me sick. Why the hell would you want to stay married to a man you have zero respect for? Ty, what can I say to make you realize that Justin was just an infatuation, an affair, nothing more? No emotion, no love. I realize now that it was wrong of me to fool around, but of course you should know that I love you and only want to be with you. I promise that from now on I will never even look at another man. Well, Lynn, if you say so, let me tell you, you must be the most delusional whore that ever walked the planet. You lied to me and cheated on me for months. Then you gave me an STD you contracted from your boyfriend, and I'm supposed to just say, "Okay dokie, honey, don't worry, let's just pretend nothing happened and go back to the honeymoon?" Let me be very clear, Lynn. I will never touch you again. I'll divorce you as soon as possible, even if I'm financially screwed. I'd rather live in a shack, destitute and alone, than in a mansion with you. The pain I've been experiencing for the past month has been beyond me. If it wasn't for the support of family and friends, I'm pretty sure I'd be lying face down in a ditch right now. You did this to me, Lynn. Your cheating, lies, callousness, and utter hatred for me almost got me killed. But you didn't, Lynn. I'm still standing on my feet, and I intend to go on my way as best I can, keeping you in my rearview mirror and never looking back. I don't know if I managed to get through to her, but tears came to her eyes. I'm sorry, Ty, was all she said before heading upstairs to the bedroom, starting to realize what she had done and the consequences that would follow. Sorry isn't all there is to say about you, Lynn, I said in response. 6 months later, we were divorced. Neither of us wanted the house, so it was sold and we split the equity. Everything else was pretty much 50-50ths too, but I ended up winning on alimony because the judge didn't award it to Lynn. When he ruled, Lynn's attorney started to protest, but the judge interrupted her. Miss Bannister, your client should be grateful that I am constrained by law to award her a 50-50th split. I don't like dishonest people, and she clearly cannot be trusted to tell the truth on any level. She gets everything I am legally required to give. The rest is at my discretion, counselor, so don't push your luck. Court is adjourned. I don't know, maybe it was just me, but he sounded a lot like a duke. Epilogue. My name is Connie Silverton, and I am Tyler Clinton's supervisor at the hospital. My husband Mike and I were very concerned about Tyler and the suffering he went through because of the actions of his bitch of a wife. The divorce was finalized, but that wasn't all. First of all, for several months, Tyler was not himself. He had to put up with Lynn's constant harassment and stalling during the divorce process. However, Eli Sharp is a good man, and he took care of Tyler all along the way. Tyler suffered a lot financially because of all the costs, but at the end of the day, he was a free man, very talented and young, so I knew he would eventually get back on his feet. Although it's been over 3 years since his divorce, he hasn't started dating yet. But he has good people around him, and apparently a certain girl from Cedar Bluffs who is in town to visit her. Aunt Beth has caught his attention. To the hospital staff, Lindsay had become an outcast. None of the married nurses wanted anything to do with her. Several of the most obnoxious doctors, both married and single, tried to get her into bed because they had all heard from Justin Banks what an easy lay she was. 6 months after her divorce, she filed her resignation. After moving to Denver, she started working at a hospital there. About a year after that, we learned that she had married a young surgeon, a rising star. A few of our crew met her at a seminar, and she seemed to have decided she was a better person after leaving, in her words, her first loser husband. Tyler Banks was also ostracized even by some of the more snarky doctors. Tyler had such a good reputation throughout the hospital that even those doctors who considered themselves players wanted nothing to do with him. He finished his residency, but received only mediocre recommendations when applying for a job. Banks ended up working at a regional hospital in Frankfort, Kentucky, earning probably half of what he would have if he had been a decent man. He also married a fine Southern girl, and from what we hear, they have been happily married for 3 years now. That's it, except for one small detail. Last night, my husband Mike, retired military, took Tyler out to dinner. This is a little unusual for him, but not completely unheard of. We enjoyed grilled steaks and good wine. After dinner, Mike asked us to join him in front of the big screen in the living room. Tyler and I looked at each other with a, "What the hell?" look. But Mike had captured our attention. He assumed his old Army colonial pose and began. "Tyler and Connie, what we see and what we talk about tonight is for just the three of us. What we see will be destroyed and will never be remembered or mentioned again." I knew this side of Mike and nodded in agreement. Tyler noticed me do so and replied, "Okay, Mike, whatever you say." Tyler, almost 4 years ago, a disgusting woman and a piece of shit caused grievous harm to a man that Connie and I love like a little brother. We have spent many hours talking about this injustice and praying that someday, perhaps somehow, the scales will balance. As you know, I have many friends and contacts in government during my 24 years in uniform. I've accumulated quite a few debts over the years, and over the past 12 months I've turned to several markers. Please watch the screen. For the next 20 minutes, we watched 2 videos with our mouths open in shock. The first was about Dr. and Mrs. James Thaddeus of Denver, Colorado. Mrs. Thaddeus, the former Mrs. Tyler Clinton, was sobbing and screaming at her husband. "You bastard, how could you do this? I've been faithful to you since we were married, and today I get a video of you cheating on me at the Hampton Inn. You bastard, I hate you, I hate you. How could you cheat on me and ruin our relationship? Get out of my house now." When Dr. Jim got up and left, Lindsay just sat there sobbing until she picked up the envelope, opened it, and read, "Betrayal hurts like a bitch, don't it, slut?" The second video showed Justin Banks standing outside his home in Kentucky. It appears he was in a quiet neighborhood with no other homes nearby. His sweet Southern wife was tearfully holding a handful of glossy 8*10 photos of her husband cheating. At that moment, 3 large men began to approach Banks. One of them was dressed in a sheriff's uniform. "So, bastard, did you think you could screw over our sister and get away with it? There won't be a piece of you left to identify if your body parts are ever found." Banks cried like a baby. Before the screen went out, a uniformed man was heard to say, "By the way, Tyler Clinton's friend Colonial Silverton sends his regards." Another scene appeared. It was a gorgeous young woman, similar to the one in the video and photos. She simply smiled into the camera and said, "Mission accomplished." Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.